Welcome to Biz Dev Live. My name is Cameron Toth, and I have the honor and the pleasure to bring on Leslie Short today. We're going to talk about her current book that is amazing. It is for CEOs. It is for leaders. I want you to go out and grab it. We're going to talk about all that and more. We're going to talk about change is now. Now's the time. We're going to talk about options. We're going to talk about why inclusion and diversity is something that you should be thinking about. And if it isn't a part of your world and what you're doing, you need to make sure that it is. We'll talk about all this and more right after the Biz Dev theme. Thank you.
Biz Dev Live, weekdays at 11 Eastern Time. Biz Dev Live, weekdays at 11 Eastern Time. Biz D with C, brought to you by Cameron T. Biz D with C, brought to you by Cameron T. This is business development, not even selling it. This is intelligent. If you watch it, I promise you benefit. Leadership and motivation, empathy and inspiration. Leadership and motivation, empathy and inspiration. Biz Dev Live, weekdays at 11 Eastern Time. Biz Dev Live, weekdays at 11 Eastern Time. Biz D with C, brought to you by Cameron T. Biz D with C, brought to you by Cameron T.
Leslie Short brings 4 decades of experience when she created the Cavu Group to focus on diversity and inclusion in an effort to facilitate and create new solutions to old and new issues. Her talents and skills are uniquely designed to seek growth through open conversations, conflict coaching, training, and workshops. She firmly believes that issues don't go away because programs are in place, but by continually evolving and having a channel to listen and understand the people who are your greatest assets. Her focus is to expand your current company culture. She is the author of Expand Beyond Your Current Culture, Diversity and Inclusion for CEOs and Leadership. Leslie, thank you so much for being on the show with me. I can't tell you how much, not only am I appreciative that you come on to the show with me, but we're talking about this. When you talk about business development and you aren't including this particular issue in your framework, not only are you doing something wrong for your folks, but I think you're doing something wrong for your money. So I'm glad that we're going to talk about it. Thank you for being on the show with me.
Thank you. I appreciate being here. Thank you so much.
Yeah, absolutely. So tell us, obviously you have a book going on right now. So tell us about that and what else you got going on. Give us the lowdown.
Yeah, the book is my new baby, Expand Beyond Your Current Culture, available at bookstores and online. I really wrote it for CEOs and leadership, and it really came out of me training and working with different companies, but also hearing from employees and friends about not being able to say certain things to their leaders. And so it isn't only my thoughts in the books. There's quotes from people from all industries, from all walks of life, that really want leaderships and CEOs to know checking a box is no longer acceptable. It was never acceptable. That there's 4 pillars to this. There's equity, there's diversity, there's inclusion, but there's company culture. And if you don't have the proper company culture, you can bring as much diversity into your company as you want. But if they don't feel included and have a way to voice their opinion and get promotions and understand where they fit in, then you're doing yourself a disservice.
Yeah, absolutely. I think, whether it's corporate social responsibility, whether it's, I think people get in their head about changing the way things are and oh my goodness, but it really comes back to the money, because when you create an inclusive place where ideas are welcome, where people feel appreciated and valued, it just adds such tremendous opportunity to the bottom line. Forget the right thing to do. Like, hello. I mean, I would like people to do things for the right reasons and just be moral and ethically good. But if you can't do it for that reason, then do it for the money. Like it just opens up opportunity, right? It just gives you a whole new focus. So tell us, you have a history in this. Talk to us about that. Why are you passionate about what you do? I really want you to lay the groundwork and lay out the credentials here, let people know why you're passionate about what you do. So this is the opportunity to do so. And I'm just going to flash up the book for 1 second, just to make sure everybody sees it.
Wonderful.
So expand beyond your current culture, diversity and inclusion for CEOs and leadership. Leslie Short, CEO of the Cavu Group. I know writing a book is a hard thing to do. So before we got into your story and everything, I just want to say congratulations on writing the book and getting it done. I know it's not easy.
Thank you. I say that I'm an author, not a writer. I have way too much respect for true writers. I am an author, and I was grateful for the opportunity to write it. Inclusion has something, I'm not even going to say diversity right away. Inclusion has inequity has been part of my life since a child. Many people know I was a classical ballet dancer. So being the only little Black girl, not only in classes, but in rehearsal studios, on stage in different countries, I saw the inequities of people, whether it was in a classroom in school or whether it was in a dance studio. And I always was the one kind of with the mouth and would call it out and say, that's not fair. That's not right. As you get older, you understand that fair is relative, but right and just is still right and just. And that it shouldn't be people fighting for a seat at tables. You should, I don't care about having a seat at the table. I care about having a valid voice at the table. And that table is regardless of where you are, whether it's on a playground or in a boardroom. And so throughout my years in traveling and in Europe and in Asia, I just always was the one that fought for the underdog. If somebody was sick in the hospital, I would be the one that they would call and say, speak to my doctors, I don't understand. And I would be the crazy person pulling everybody in a room and like, I need to understand this better for them. You're not doing a good job explaining it. And so it's just something that's always been a passion. And I've always integrated it within being a corporate operations strategist, where I was hired as a consultant to work with different companies to look at what their strategies were, their branding, their staffing. And I would always say, why are all your interns look like they just came out of central casting? Where are you hiring people? Why are people not staying here? And I finally just said, this is what I want to do full time. I want to help companies really, like I said, expand beyond your current culture. How do you grow your company culture, your organizational culture? It's not about, oh my God, we're going to change. It's going to be about growth. And that's what I work with companies. Your bottom line will grow and your retention will grow. Your inclusiveness will grow if you build it in and work at it. It's not an add-on. So that's why I love to do what I'm doing.
I love it. And just being able to look at a company, I kind of pride myself on being able to look at companies and see what they need. And too often, coming into a room, it's sort of the obvious thing to me as I look around. I grew up in New York City. So I am not used to, and in fact, I'm a little uncomfortable when I walk into a room and everybody's got sort of the same look. I'm kind of used to some different things going on, walking down the street, seeing something interesting, whether it's somebody with tattoos up inside their head or it's, just an amazing amount of diversity, people coming from all different places, and the value of people's cultural insights on how you're doing things. I'm in the hospitality business, so people's traditions, all the fun that goes in it, it really creates creativity. So talk to me about some of the results, some of the things that have come out of working with companies and bringing people to the table. What's some of the benefits that you've seen for folks? What are some of the things that sort of stand out to you as, maybe people are watching this and they know they need to. And so hopefully we're preaching to the choir there. But for folks that may be sort of not sort of getting it, what are some of the benefits that have been driven from this process?
Number one, diversity is bigger than gender and race. Let's just start there. There's gender, there's race, there's LGBTQ++, there is disabilities, sight seen and unseen, and there's veterans. Being able to broaden those definitions for company, and of course, diversity of thought and diversity of politics and all those things, but being able to work with companies and just even broaden their thought process on how they're looking at diversity and then how they're hiring and how they're retaining people, like to work with the company. And then, everyone says, oh, well, we have the handbook. And I go, it's nothing against the handbook. How clear is the handbook? Let's be honest. You sign the handbook when you get the gig and you're like, oh my God, I got a job, I'm getting a check. Sign the handbook and keep it moving. Very few people go back and reference it. So even filling out code of conducts of things that you can do without asking in the company, like taking your vacation or taking your mental health days. Recently I've had the Crown Act, for being able to wear your natural hair written into handbooks. I've had it clarified how you can get promotions, how do you get leadership, and how do you get mentorship within the company. And then I just worked with the company that's main goal this year for one of their biggest projects was not only to have diversity represented, but to really have it awarded, to have inclusion awarded. And that was Indigenous, was really across the board. And they had their show the other day, and I could not have been prouder of the fact of they worked really hard in building a inclusion council mixed of their industries and outside of their industry, as well as to really have people that could also advise as I kind of looked over the big picture. And when that award show happened, you saw full of America represented. So it was great. So those types of things really make a difference.
Yeah, you have a history in events. And so I'd love to hear a little bit about how that is played out through your event experience. And, because you talk about walking into, that's usually one of the places where it's a little tough, because I walk into events and you sort of see who are the speakers, who are being featured and highlighted.
Right.
I'm a member of an organization right now, and I can sort of look and see that I love the organization. Like I love the local membership and everything. But you can look at the national leadership and you can see what's going on. There is no diversity there. It's the white male, some white women thrown in there for a good job, and one maybe person that has a little bit of color, and certainly nothing along the lines of anything remotely sounding like, seeming like, or being like in the kind of diverse sexual framework, nothing focused on that framework, right? So you can see it. I don't know if everybody sees it. I know I can see it.
Look, it's an industry that's always had that issue. I was, again, one of the ones, one of the very few that would be in, that would really be in the room and had a voice in the room. And to this day, I'm still one. I've had my event business for over 20 something years. It is not new, and I'm not new to walking in the room and being the only one. I don't hold on to that though, because I'm clear of the talents for which I bring and for what I bring that is different. And so with that, I walk in going, you have to figure out why I'm here. I don't need to prove to why I'm here. And I think if people really understand their worth, that they will, one, start inviting people into the room. And if not, for those that feel like they need to be invited into the room, start inviting themselves into the room. When everything happened with George Floyd, I did receive calls from different event organizations to come speak, because it is the responsibility of leadership, regardless of industry, to open up their doors. But again, when you're opening up your doors, just don't be there to open up the doors to say we're diverse. Be there to say, we want to know and understand the talents that you bring, the cultures that you bring. How do you work your events? So, I remember, just a quick story, and I don't think this one's in the book. I've shared some other event stories in the book, but I remember going to buy flowers and no one wanted to sell me flowers here in New York City, because I wasn't working for one of the big magazines. And in their mind, I guess, was some black chick that could not have possibly had $30,000 to just spend on flowers. And so to this very day, I go to the same flower person in New York, because they treated me with respect. They didn't care. They were just like, what do you need? I got you. Where you need me to ship it? And, the funny thing is, we all go into food and wine out in Aspen. And I had over $30,000 to spend. And when the market tanked for events, all of a sudden everyone wanted to be my new best friend, because they still saw me running up and down 28th Street, clearly buying. That was on them. That's not on me. And so I think when we start looking at how we open up, how are you and why do you want to bring people in that don't look like you and sound like you and walk like you? Because we're in a day and age that people don't need or have to be in groups to be successful. They can create their own and build their own. And so I think that goes across for whether you're in corporate or events. But when you come together and collaborate, it makes things stronger. But it can't always be a tit for tat. And it can't be an abusive culture just to say, I know someone, because one is not enough.
Yeah, absolutely. And Craig Caruso, my buddy here, who's his wife is Liz King Caruso. They do Texty Talk, and he's talking about this. Leslie Short really helped me get away from a toxic environment years ago. The last Texty Talk with Liz, she took time to talk with me, and I was able to grow away from that job. And I love that he put the term grow away from the job, because I think that's so huge for those folks facing adversity around diversity, but anything else too, but particularly about adversity. Like, let's get you into a situation where we can move you up. There's plenty of places for you to go and really excel. And so let's get you somewhere where they appreciate you.
Yeah, let's have the equity. And thank you, Greg, for that. That means a lot to me. He said that, but that means a lot that he shares it with others. Look, it really is about equity, and we all want that. What does equity mean? It means having access to resources and tools and compensation, being respected for your work. And, that respect word is used a lot. So I ask companies, what exactly does that mean here? What does respect mean in your company? What does equity honestly mean? And we have to break down. And sometimes I build a company vocabulary, so that we're all on the same page, because respect to me and respect to someone else or equity may not be the same thing. So I think communication as part of diversity and inclusion also needs to happen.
Yeah, I don't want to. I got a couple of different thoughts. One thing that I really want to talk about is going back to the handbook thing, because I think that's going to be really good for small businesses and entrepreneurs, just to sort of have in their mind what they want to do, conversations and things that Gary Vaynerchuk has said to me around empathy, and just,
right.
I love, like, he's very direct with it. If you're in a room, I don't care what you're producing, if you are disrespecting somebody, if you're shutting somebody down, you're not allowing room for this person to speak and their voice to be heard, you're out of here. I'm going to let you know, I'm going to be direct with you. I'm going to let you know first, like, what's going on. And if that behavior doesn't change, gone, and being very clear with that. So I want to go into that. I also want to talk about our current administration. We're on the verge, and for my part, I'm going to say, thank goodness, we're on the verge of changing presidents of our country. It is January 14th, 2021. Our current president hasn't been impeached for the second time, and I think rightfully so, for inciting violence against our own capital, where the people that make our laws work and spend a lot of their time. I have noticed the conversation so crazy in the country. To me, it is night and day that we have a president that does not respect diversity, that does not respect unique points of view and different cultures. And I could use much more severe language, but I think that might distract from the point.
Yeah. Look, let's be honest. Everyone is not on the road to unity, to equity, to diversity and inclusion. This is not new. I don't know why so many people are surprised, maybe because it's up and out front at this moment. This is not new. So it's our responsibility, of those that do believe in humanity, equity, inclusion, and diversity, to continue to build and work towards that. Because I'm not going to get caught up in the rhetoric of why that is happening. I need to figure out why it was allowed to happen, and how do we change it moving forward? Because there will not be a light switch in the new administration. There will be an empathy switch. There will be hopefully a humanity switch, but the work will be even harder, because the genie is out of the bottle of not feeling like you need to include others. And so there's a lot of real work of introspection of yourself, who you are, and the added value to build an inclusive and humane and equitable society.
Yeah, I think there's going to be a lot of conversation about what this administration comes out. And my question is a little bit, because and I know that you're talking to some corporate leaders, so I thought you might have some insight on this. It seems like 50% of the country didn't get that this president was blatantly non-inclusive, right? And again, I can use more inflammatory wording, but again, I don't want to distract from the point. I just don't understand, and maybe you can share some insight. Why are people not seeing it? I understand that there was a couple people in the administration of color, and I know people will point, well, we have, and you sort of talked about it, like I got my black friend, or I got my, I have some family that, play in that queer zone. So I get, but I'm good. I can say that because no, right. But I just don't understand. It seems so clear to me, but 50% of the country sort of seem to be okay with it. And I'm just wondering, what is the conversation to the C-suite? How do you convince folks that their diversity play isn't that diverse? I'm wondering where the communication disconnect is and how you get past that.
Well, people are who they are. I don't care what title they have or what company they own. It's not my job to convince anyone of anything. You see it on the book. My Socrates quote, I can't teach anybody anything. I can only make them think. And so my job is to go in and be able to show who's in front of them and why it may not be working. And then be able to show, if you shift, how it can be. But again, everyone's not on the road for this. And so people bring in, there's work culture and there's family culture. And people will bring in their family and their history culture into work. And that comes out. And there's people that get to work in their work culture, and they have to put that family culture beliefs on the side. But unless you actually have those conversations, that what will your company culture be? What is that going to look like? And what's that going to feel like for people that don't look like you, sound like you, and walk like you? That's how I have the conversation. Because most people are not looking like them, sounding like them, and walking like them, even if they're the same color, because some CEOs are so high up with the amount of money that they have that it's still a disconnect. But I'm going to look at the body as a whole. If I really don't look like you, sound like you, and walk like you, how do you think I feel in this process? How am I supposed to move in this process when I think you don't even see me or want to hear me? And yeah. I have honest conversations with them. And then I will ask them, what is your personal added value? Not your title, not the company. What do you bring to the table to another human being? At that point, they kind of have to stop and sit back and answer. That's why when I do bias trainings, I don't do the old fashioned. There's something I created, because we need to look at ourselves and say, how do I add to the conversation? How do I add to the solution, as opposed to there's an issue? We know there's issues. We need to figure out how we're going to maneuver these issues right now.
Well, and that's the incredible point, right? So, and I witness that every day. When people go to the place where they just talk about the problems, it gets in the way of getting towards a solution. So I 110% agree with that, right? So let's talk about how to move forward. Let's not worry on the past. I also appreciate the fact that, you can throw the facts, you can throw the figures, but you can't change a person and what they're bringing into the room. So how do you actually deal with the person that's in front of you in the room, and you're laying down some solid methods to get into that. for folks that really want to make sure they're getting a good start from the get-go and they're creating a good culture within their company, how do you basically advise folks to think about their first hire or how they're going to set up their company so that their onboarding process is inclusive and they're doing the best things for themselves and for the company?
It's the old-fashioned educate yourself is number one. There's so many articles out on building inclusive cultures, and so start by reading, start by educating yourself, and then start by looking at your circle. Who is it that understands your passion or your mission, but also has a diversity of thought, and who's in their circle that you can also bring in. I always say I know we're in COVID at this moment, but there's bookstores that are open. There are some cafes. You can put up notices. We're on the internet. You put up a post saying, I'm trying to build this. I'd love to have a think tank. There's so many different ways that you can reach out now and say, hey, I'm doing this. I watched you do it. Do you mind spending 15 minutes with me and giving me 5 tips of the best way to build this? But you have to educate yourself to why is it important to you as the business owner to have diversity, one. And then once I have all this diversity in front of me that I may not have dealt with, what are the fair things that I think I can offer to them? And then guess what? You ask them, what are you expecting from me? It's a conversation that has to be had that most people don't want to have. It's like going in and asking for a raise sometimes. People don't want to ask for that. It's uncomfortable. Well, guess what? Sometimes speaking about race and gender and sexuality is uncomfortable. But the only way we are going to begin to move forward is having these conversations and building and learning from each other. So when you're building your business, look at a business that you may admire and go, that's how I'm going to try to model this a little bit. I'm going to have conversation. I'm going to study. I'm going to ask people questions. I'm going to really see how I can build this so that it is inclusive. And I am speaking to not only the 5 or 10 or 20 or 30 or 100 consumer base that I have, but that I can continue to grow as a business.
Absolutely. I am so really interested in how somebody communicates that they are a diverse and inclusive business and really come off sounding like they're authentic and real. Because I see a lot of stuff, you have like on the end of a job ad, where whatever that's
the legal EEOC.
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah.
But that doesn't really do it for me. So how do you recommend people communicate that message that they're looking for diversity in their company?
Well, it's funny. I have in the book kind of a list of what others have said. We know when you're not diverse when you're using stock photos. When we go to an interview or you have a conversation with someone that's worked there and they kind of hint or they do their head, they say what they say and what they do is 2 different things. So it's also someone goes into an interview and you're like, hey, but guess what? You're going to make best friends with Tamisha. And you look around and Tamisha's the only Black or brown person in the company. You're already off, or you start telling me about, my cousin, I marched with them in that LGBT thing. And I'm like, oh, the thing. So people know there is a feeling or a gut that we get when you're not being authentic. And if you don't have diversity and inclusion, how about just saying it's important for me as a company or us as a company to begin to diversify, to become inclusive. And we genuinely want to make that effort. I have been hired by companies that their leadership in a smaller company was all white. There was 2 females, 2 males, and that was it. But they had a lot of diverse working for them, but it wasn't very inclusive when it got to leadership. And so they were able to not just say, but build how people could now be promoted within. So you have to show what you're doing, and not with the fake pictures, not with the Black Lives Matter, not with the black box, not with just taking off for Juneteenth. We want to see it. I want to know that people are getting promoted. I want to see it in your boardroom. I'm looking from the mailroom to the boardroom. That to me is diverse, not just one segment of group, not just the accountants, not just the creative. What's your leadership look like? What's your board look like? Because that sometimes is who people need to answer to. So when I go onto a website, what photos are there? I'm researching that. If it's a product shot, how many different color hands is holding the product? We see you if you're real, or if you're just jumping on the bandwagon of black boxes and Juneteenth because you think that's what you're supposed to do.
I love that. I love that. And I think one of the challenges that I've had as a white male and owner of a company, I have 130 part-time staff with Toth Event Staffing. Mm-hmm. One of the most difficult things, being somebody that wants diversity in their club, their company, is how to handle folks, white males in particular, that are bringing some of that toxicity into the workplace with little comments, mm-hmm. different things that are said. There's feedback from staff, and I'm in the position of being like, can you stop being a racist? Can you stop being this person that has this point of view? What is the way to kind of lay it out in the company handbook that there's a zero tolerance policy for that kind of stuff that allows for the room for growth, but allows you as a business owner to make sure that those people, if you remove them from the company, that doesn't come back and bite you in the butt, lawsuit, all that kind of stuff.
Well, I think, look, we can write anything in a handbook. So you're speaking about microaggressions. I've had on headsets, and people forgot that I was on headsets and said something, and I responded back because that's who I am. But as the leader, you have to set the tone. When you hear it, you have to stop it. Yes, have it written in the handbook. Also have code of conducts, things that are posted up, that are emailed out. Everyone signs it before they start an event. You have to hold people accountable. But you just can't say it. When you see it or hear it, you've got to stop it. And you've got to give the permission and space on how do you let your staff know that how they can report it back to you. Set that tone. And so if it is, and it's funny, I'm going to be speaking about this weekend. If you're saying these things and you're doing these things and it's already written as a moral and ethical agreement within the company, and it's clear that once you've been spoken to or twice or whatever you decide that you're terminated, then by all rights, they've signed off on it and they know they can be terminated.
I love that. And that's actually something that I haven't done. I've been in business for 9 years. And it was interesting because as I started, naive and everything, I'm in the hospitality industry. I didn't in the beginning say things like, you can't drink on the job, mm-hmm. That you have to treat people respectfully. I thought, that's common sense, right? You're going to show up and, if you drink, you're going to be, that's not appropriate. I had to lay it out because I had to have that ability to say, we've said it. We've been over this. You acknowledged it. And if that happens, there's a zero tolerance policy. So I'm going to add, I think this has been worth the price of admission already, Leslie, because it's going to help my company. I'm going to write in there language around diversity and inclusion that makes sure to note that kind of language, behavior, microaggression, zero tolerance. There's no tolerance for making somebody feel less than because of your political, cultural view. We're all people. We all bring value. Right. That's non-negotiable. I love that. And I'm definitely.
But you have to spell it out now. Saying diversity and inclusion doesn't mean anything.
Okay. Yeah. Help me out.
It's racism, sexism, sexual orientation, political. Like you have to break it down. Is where I'm changing in handbooks to be really clear. None of this will be tolerated. Microaggressions will not be tolerated. And then you may have to educate people on what is a microaggression. Some people don't even know what that is. So, let's
Can you for the purpose of this, can you kind of spell that out for folks, what some of those microaggressions might look like when it comes to race, to gender, to sexual preference, to disabilities?
Yes. So for disabilities, sometimes someone will say, wow, you can really get around in that. I'm surprised you showed up. Well, disrespectful. For race, what I will hear a lot, well, most will hear, oh, you speak so well. Or you changed your hair again. For LGBTQ, well, I don't know. I guess love is love, but not all love's the same. There is that, or when it's a compliment, oh, you look good for your age. Or, wow, you move well. And that could be about weight. And so it sounds like a compliment. And sometimes you hear it and it may take a minute and you walk away and be like, wait a minute, what was that? So it is setting the tone. When I hired staff, they signed, and anybody can tell you, they signed a event agreement with me for that day, and they signed a confidentiality agreement with me every single event. And some of them would be like, come on, Leslie, we're about to do 10 events together. I got to sign it every time. So if it was staff that I knew that would be working with me, those 10 straight, they signed one. But everyone knows, I don't care how long you work with me, that is going to be signed. And that I'm going to have a full staff conversation about what I expect, about what you are going to wear, how we're going to present ourselves as a company, what it was on the line for me as a Black woman owning an event company. And anyone that knows me knows I've always been diverse. I hire for talent. Yes. I will also fire for talent if it's not right.
Right.
And so it was always across the board. And so I just want to go back, if you don't mind, 1 second, if you can. If you are going to say, everyone says, oh, I want diversity, but I can't find someone. We all know that's a lie. You're being lazy. End of story, conversation. There are so many options to find people. Step out of your comfort zone and place an ad somewhere else. Start asking people who's good in the industry. Who should I be speaking to? There's zero excuse for not having lack of diversity anywhere.
Yeah, for anybody that's having trouble finding somebody that is diverse, give me a call, right? I mean, it's such a silly thing. Anybody that says, oh, there's not somebody senior enough, whatever, I think all of that stuff is just, it's malarkey.
To put it nicely, yes.
It's one of those things, right? To quote our incoming president. So I'm really excited about this conversation. I hope that the viewers that are watching this, I'd love to hear some write-ons and types of experiences that you've dealt with and how you handle them. If you have questions and you're watching this live, please ask them now so we can answer them in the moment and give you some great advice for that. And if you're watching this recorded, ask those questions and I'll make sure that Leslie gets them. Talk to me, Leslie, about where you see corporate culture going right now. What are you seeing on the horizon that's making things better? What do you see on the legal front that's making the world better? Because obviously we have a lot of inequity and a lot of catching up to do to make sure that everyone has an equal playing field. What are you sort of seeing around in the industry that's sort of exciting to you?
Well, I always say I don't believe the word equal because we're never going to be equal. So let's be equitable. Let's make sure we have the path to succeed. We have the tools to succeed, and that the building blocks that leadership stands up and helps to move them. I will also say to people that sometimes you may not be in the right place, and you may need to know when it's time to go, that you have gone as far as you can go with that company or organization because their focus and purpose is not. Everyone says now, oh, I want to put out diversity and inclusion reports. Unless you have actually grown in your building, don't put out something for the heck of putting it out, or put it out and say, we have a lot of work to do. This is where we would like to go. But if you're using diversity and inclusion as a numbers game, you're going to lose. I'm going to repeat that. If it's a numbers game for you, you're going to lose, because if you're not retaining the talent for which you say you want to bring in and giving them the opportunity to be equitable, that's where you're going to lose. So I think companies are slowly starting to grasp that, again, the 4 pillars of diversity, inclusion, equity, and company culture must be in tandem. That diversity and inclusion is not an add-on, but it must be embedded within your company foundation. That is slowly, they're starting to get that now, that this needs to happen. And that you should not, using that lightly, be judging someone for a disability or who they love or the color of their skin, but for the talent and skills and the added value for who they are that they bring into the workplace and add it in to the mission and focus of the organization and company. There's a lot of conversations on mission and focus and making sure that that aligns to where we are in society today. So for that, I am hopeful. I'm always hopeful, or I'm going to be out the game, because it's hard work to dig down and peel back the onion skins of the way that people have been able to work without question. Now leaders have to answer and be held accountable to their commitments.
I love that. And I know you write about in the book how organizations in other countries are approaching corporate diversity and inclusion. I'd love you to talk a little bit about that. What are you seeing in other countries that, I don't know, positive, negative? What's your take?
Yeah, I mean, in other countries, they're looking at diversity and inclusion is looked at very differently. A lot of it is women and disabilities. In Israel, if there's complaints with a company, because most of the companies will be getting money from the country, if there are complaints, they go in and they investigate immediately. If there's more than 2 or 3 complaints, they're put on a regime where the state of Israel is actually, a country of Israel is putting consultants like myself into the company. They are getting trainings. It's a 3-year process. There is no they don't believe in fining. They're like, oh no, you're going to learn today. We will be shifting this company culture for you.
Mm.
So it's just a very different way how government and country is involved in companies.
How do they manage that on the legal side? Who's paying for that? Is that on the company's dime, or is that on the country's dime? How do they figure that out?
I don't want to misspeak. So if there's anyone from the Israel Council that's watching right now, please jump in, because that's where I receive the information from. I believe it is the Israel is paying. It's part of a process that they go in, and that's why, because they believe that you're investing into the companies, why they already have money in them, that you're investing in for them to continue to grow.
Yeah, a lot of countries have money in. They have some sort of ownership or money invested through programs in the country. So part of that program, you want to be a part of that program, and that's true of the U.S. as well. Although it seems, at least from history, that there's not a lot of accountability for companies that do receive government money. Is that changing in the U.S.?
I think it is slowly changing. Because they have to. That's why, you have the EEO that's here, where you see the statement down at the bottom. But I think they are starting to hold companies somewhat responsible. And I think what companies are starting to hold themselves responsible, knowing that they can be held responsible. And not all, but I think the shift is slowly starting to happen. Because people have voices now in a different way. And there's that lovely technology, internet, and things that when things are good, employees don't always go on and I work for a great company, but let something go wrong. They're the worst. They're not inclusive. They're not equitable. This one, you hear about it. So I always say to clients, here's the option. You can pay me or someone like me or a company like me, or you can pay more attorneys. So which line item would you like to have?
Now we're convincing some people, right? Yeah.
Because you're getting one of the line items right now.
I want to go back to the international thing if there's some more room to go there, if you got something, but I want to bring something else in if there's not. So recently, the which part of the, I don't know if it was the New York Stock Exchange, one of the stock exchange made a requirement that in order to be on the exchange, they had to provide diversity in their board. And if they did not provide, and I think it was something, ridiculously low bar. I think it was just like one person. Maybe you can speak to it a little bit more, a little bit knowledgeable on the fact. But then if they didn't bring that in, then they needed to justify why, which I thought was pretty interesting, because I'd love to read that, right? Like, what's your reasoning for why this isn't happening? Can you talk to us a little bit about that?
Oh, can I ever? Here is the issue with that. Yay, great, love it. Let's put that there. The issue is when so many people look at gender in some companies, they look at women. Great, love it, all of that. The issue on top of the issue on the issue is they look at white women. And white women cannot be the face of diversity. And so that was what was happening, where, we got it. We got a woman. We're diverse. And let's move on with the 15 gentlemen. And that is not, gender, of course, is part of diversity. And I'm always happy to see any woman step up and be able to be in the right room with their voices heard. But it was getting to the point where white women were becoming the face of diversity. And it's just not acceptable. Because again, we broke out race, gender, LGBTQ, disabilities, plus, all of that. And people felt like, oh, well, I did it. And there was that checkbox again. So in order for this to be true and to be accountable and to be growth worthy, I am happy that they said, we're looking for this and you need to have this, but we need to go beyond what's right in front of us.
I really appreciate that. It seems like in society, there's like a pecking order, and it's like, okay, we're going to have a white man, and then the next step up is a black man, and then the next step up is a white woman. Like there's like this pecking order, which, somebody tell me the number to dial who created that. Like which I think is part of what you're referring to, just because that's sort of the way that people have sort of decided, like, order of diversity, and somewhere down the line is like, gender different and disability and all that, right? Because that's not being included. And when we talk about, Congress, because I think it does start with our government, in this country, we don't really have a Congress that reflects people. If we did, we would have people in Congress that, had degenerative disease. We would have, folks that, had more disabilities. We would have more people that are coming from maybe the Native American population that were part of the founding of this country, that have always gotten a raw deal, but represent so little of our government, and it's wildly optimistic and enjoyable to hear about, like, the one or the two people that somehow make it into the upper echelon, but it's totally underrepresentative of the numbers that are available in this country. It's nice to see the stock exchange include some language, force the money to be there, force people to do that. What is the language? Because we talked about that, right? So we're going to start a job. We're going to put, a job description together. We're going to lay out, the onboarding process. We know that we need to do these things. We know we need to identify these things and spell them out if we want change to happen. What is the language that you would be looking for? Because it's confusing to me, right? I understand what you're saying in terms of white women can't be the face of diversity. Absolutely on board. How do we create language that really makes people understand this is the way we bring equity to all?
I think you have to look at, are you writing an inclusive language? Is everything he or she, or is it employee? It's not only your job listing, what's your job application? Do you have to check Black, white, Hispanic? Are there other boxes you can check, or is that a write-in? How do you identify? Is it, I know I had one company that took the felon off, and they opened that up because in their company, everyone was going to have a background check, regardless if it was the CEO or if it was someone, I would say mailroom. Everyone would have to do that. So why stop people that could be talented and something could have happened when they were 19 from getting a job when they're 32 or 28, so that they would be fair, my loose word, equitable, and being able to interview those people if everything else looked right. And then the background check would determine whether it could be a go, a yay or nay, depending on what that looked like. So there's just ways that, being inclusive in your language as employee, as opposed to he or she, that is simple taking out.
I love that as a starting block for just changing culture across our country specifically, but the world. Not making people fall into the he and she piece of it. Male, female. Do you have another option there? And then that even starts with like the DMV. And I know some DMVs and some states have moved beyond the male female box, but people are so locked into that. What do we say, going back to this question around, if we're putting together a law, we're putting together a policy, because it was interesting that the stock exchange did that, and it wasn't something that it was a law that was passed, because that's usually, I think, the way that it happens, although there might be some groundswell or state action before it gets to a national law.
Right.
Usually it comes up through the legal system. What is the language that states and the country should be looking for to make sure that, and I'm frankly tired of, the whole argument over whether or not like a college or university should, have a diversity and inclusion component in terms of numbers. It seems so ridiculous to me that you wouldn't make sure that in these institutions that have institutionalized racism for many, many, many generations, some that were literally born out of the plantation system and all that stuff, why you wouldn't make diversity a priority. The fact that it enhances educational outcomes, there's data to show that, economic diversity, racial diversity, cultural diversity, all those components, right? What is the language that we should really be focusing on, or lack thereof? Like what do we need to include or not include in terms of how we're saying to people, this needs to be your process, and how to bring everybody to the table?
So it's not about language right away. Like we can word it inclusively all day. What are you doing when I arrive? How am I going to be treated when I arrive? I don't care what you wrote. How am I feeling when I get there? Is there humanity lessons that everyone has to take and courses? Are there cultural classes that are mandatory for everyone? Does everyone mandate a bias quiz and not just a video to click? So what are you doing? What does it look like when I get there? Do professors look like me or sound like me, or counselors look like me or sound like me, or anyone that is diverse? Do you have ramps up the old colleges that are landmarks? And so they say they can't build ramps. Of course you can add ramps. There's ways to do it. Or do you have ramps? Do you have a true ADA restroom? And I learned this by someone, or you have an ADA restroom, but the hooks for the bag is all the way up top. So don't mandate diversity if you're not going to take it all the way to inclusion on every level.
So I think you took this an interesting direction. I'm going to chime in here because I think this is a good direction. So, I asked you about language, what we should do with laws, and I think that's the way a lot of people's minds will work around it. And you went someplace, which is my personal passion, education and opportunity. So the opportunity to educate people on all of the value of diversity and including it in early curriculum so that the next generation, I'd love your kind of thoughts on how we educate the older generations that are out in the workplace. I think we actually have a moment where virtual education is a big deal. We could require things with, I hate like requirements around unemployment and everything, making people jump through loops, but I'm certain there's something that we could do in terms of adult education, in terms of requirements for some kind of government help. And more importantly, because probably the people that are looking for that government help aren't the most neediest, but somebody that, if they're going to get a tax break or something, they go through I don't know. I'm kind of brainstorming here. But
you give me about 15 things. So you give me 15 things. Let me go back to the laws for you.
Yeah.
There's a lot of law. There's a lot of policies that's being written, and there's policy before they become law. So yes, there's things that are being put in place in regards to diversity or inclusion, whether it's on boards or, like I say, the Crown Act is, being passed. Juneteenth as holidays, as federal holidays are being passed in different places. All of that is great, but again, if you don't execute them and with context, then there are laws, there's many laws and policies that's just sitting out there at this moment. In regards to educating and teaching in education, I'm actually working with a school district. Mm-hmm. And part of my task is I'm going to be working with teachers, guidance counselors, and then with parents. Because again, it has to be a full circle. We can't look at everything linear. Sometimes we're such a linear country. It's got to be black or it's got to be white, and only few people see the gray. But if we don't do this as a full circle, I can work with teachers all day. That child goes home and they're hearing something else in the home.
Yes.
Or they're in the home and they're hearing something. They come and experience something different with their teachers.
Yes.
Or with the guidance counselors. So again, we need to look at how do you build the bridge of education, of understanding, and it's not a one size fits all. Because everyone is not in the same. So again, if you do these laws, everyone's not on the same journey of understanding what a microaggression is or what diversity looks like outside of race and gender, because that's the first two things that people think of. So you have to walk people on this journey and deal with different groups at different times in different ways, because everyone's not going to be caught up. And again, some people don't want to get on the bandwagon at all. But then they will be left, because I can tell you the younger generation, when I have conversations with them, they are kind of done. They're done of black and white and purple and green. They're like, when are we going to start taking people for who they are? So when I do speaking engagements and I speak with the younger, and I'm talking 20 and even under, they inspire me because they're ready to do the work. A lot of them are activists in their own communities. They're in the work right now, and they speak up. And they speak up and say, it's not going to happen. We will not accept that. That doesn't work for us. And then we look at Congress. We will have the most diverse Congress we've ever had moving forward. Is it enough? Of course not. But is it more than we've ever had? And there's much more representation. I want one in the room to bring two in the room, to bring three in the room. And I believe that the one in the room, if they're there for the right reason, will make sure that they not only have their voice for their community and culture, but that they have their own council of their diversity or thought within their culture that they're bringing into the room. That's how we have diversity in the room. It's not just one or two. The one or two that get in the room must bring the diversity of culture into the room, or we will stay the same.
I love that. So ready for a new day. And when you talk about the youth and their piece to play in all this, it's really encouraging because there are such amazing movements across the country. Social media is on fire with diversity. TikTok is a moment for people that are all about diversity. So I love it. I am really excited about the new day that is dawning for so many pieces of representation in this country. It's very exciting. Like you say, we have the most diverse Congress coming in, and there's a real moment for change. Of course, it's the U.S. government, so you have to put some salt on your on the expectations, sort of reel back what you think might happen, because there's a lot of players in the game that have some special interests and this, that, and the other. So change can come slow sometimes. I love that we're talking about the fact that one person can change it. I like that we're talking about for folks growing beyond their role, and I don't want to miss the opportunity for you to speak a little bit more on that for folks that know they're in a situation that's not really taking them where they should go. So I'd love you to speak to that, and then we'll put up the link to the book and talk about how people can get a hold of you. Go ahead.
Absolutely. You have to know what you want, and be realistic about it. And if you are in a place that 9 out of 10 has shown you that's not going to be possible, and probably have told you in many different ways that that's not possible, then you have to sit back and go, where do I grow here? Or is there something that I can still learn in this place that I can benefit myself for my growth to take elsewhere? There are always options. We get stuck in trying to fight a system sometime that may not be built for you for your growth. But if you can get out of it what you can, and I don't want it to be a tit for tat, but if you're learning, if there's opportunities to watch somebody else do something that you may one day want to do, and you can take that knowledge, no one can take that from you. You get to take that and build and grow somewhere else, or you build and grow your own. But we cannot allow ourselves to get in the black hole of feeling that we are stuck. There are options. And sometimes you have to be the only person that can believe in you is you in the beginning. And then you have to take that leap of faith, but you need to already be aware of where you're going or where you think you can go, and be flexible enough to say, this doesn't work now, I need to move. It's like being a boxer. You have to bob and weave, but you can grow.
I love that. And I think people have to give themselves permission to reach out. I'm going to give you permission right now to reach out to Leslie Short. She's going to help you. I know there's so many people that can help you with this. One of the big breakthroughs for me this year has been to give myself, and because I'm hosting a show, but also for personal growth and development, to reach out and ask for that help and ask for that mentorship. It's such a big deal. And so many people are hesitant. Clubhouse is a big thing right now. I don't know. Have you jumped on to Clubhouse?
Yeah, I'm on.
Yeah. So we definitely got to get some rooms together. But it's really interesting to see the conversation around like invites. Mm-hmm. And I was talking about this morning, like people just like there's this feeling of like, I don't want to put it out there that I need an invite. I'm telling people, just put it out on LinkedIn. You got a big network, put it out on LinkedIn. Right. Ask for an invite. I'll share your post. We'll get you an invite. But people are like very much like I don't know if it's the exclusive nature of it. And this is where I think the problem with diversity comes in, right? When you have a company, is that people get so nervous about speaking up that they're going to be looked at in a way. And it's a lot of times I can't speak.
Raise your hand. I'm like, ask. And sorry to cut you off. You have to ask. Yeah. I know what I can do. I know where my strengths are. I'm very clear what my weaknesses are. I sent an email to someone the other day. I was like, above my pay grade, we're starting to talk this tech stuff now. I thought I was good. They started saying redirect. I don't want to touch a button. That's not my strength. So I asked for help.
It works everywhere, right? Because I know that's something that's very common too. You don't want to seem like you know less. So you'll be nodding along, and then you're whispering to a friend, like when we were back in the office all working together and not working from home, you would lean over and say, you know what they're talking, Yeah. But you can say, hey, clarify. And usually there's probably 5, 6, 10, 20, 30 other people in the room that are so happy somebody asked, because they were lost too. So yeah, don't be afraid to speak up. I think one of the things, and I'll talk to men and women, particularly my females, because I've had so many women, both in my life and out and about in professional world. There is this thing where, you have this guy that'll come in and he'll talk about his little bit of experience in such a big way. And then I'll have a woman come in and she'll have, triple, quadruple, 10 times the resume, and she's so shy and so humble, talking about what she has. And I'm not looking for anybody to be big bad boasters about what they're doing, but man, claim your space, claim your excellence, claim your professionalism, claim your authority, and speak up. And when you don't understand, ask the question, and let's move the conversation forward. Thank you so much for doing this with me today. I'm gonna highlight the book here. I'm gonna throw the link on Amazon for the book.
Thank you.
Into the comments section on this, and we'll make sure that it's part of the notes down below. You can go link with Leslie down below on the YouTube video, and off to the side on the Facebook broadcast. I'm going to throw up the book. So we got Expand Beyond Your Current Culture, Diversity and Inclusion for CEOs and Leadership by Leslie Short. Thank you for sharing all this with us. How can people, in addition to the LinkedIn address below, how can people connect with you, and who are you in particular trying to connect with?
I always say, everyone always asks me, who's your best client? And I'm like, anyone that's willing to do the work. Someone that says, I want to continue to grow. I really want to do this work. How do we do that in my company? That's a great client. You always connect with me on LinkedIn. That's always probably the easiest way. I do respond back. And, my website, the Cavu Group, make sure it's the Cavu Group, THECAVU GRUP Group. You can always send me messages through that as well. And they know how to find me through you.
Yeah, I'm going to say this too for ideal customers, well-meaning CEOs and leaders, folks that really want to include diversity in their company, but they are putting the foot in the mouth, they're stepping over their own toes, they're getting in their own way. Subtly reach out to them, connect them with me. I'll send them Leslie's way. Let's help them out. I think, it's challenging when you got people that don't know that they're doing anything wrong and don't have any desire to change. So well-meaning folks that just haven't really figured it out, Leslie can definitely help them. And we'll work on those folks that aren't trying to change their ways and start pushing some numbers under their nose and let them know, hey, here's a good reason you might want to change. And oh yeah, you might do a lot better on the bottom line. That's usually a good way to get people to start snipping up the right tree. Again, thank you so much for this, Leslie. I'm going to let you have the last word here and let people know where they can find the book. Say the book title again, where they can find it. And I know you have a website for the Cavu Group, so say that one more time and say goodbye, and we'll play everybody off with the BizDev theme.
Wonderful. You can get the book, Expand Beyond Your Current Culture, from Amazon, Barnes & Noble, Target, Walgreens, and look for it in your local bookstores. It is shipping. It is out now. I really did write this for CEOs and leadership, so grab the book. It is an easy read. It will give you tips and hints how to move this forward. There's things that I say this in there that if it's not clear, call me or have a coffee or a drink virtually, and let's make this happen. You can reach me at my website, which is www.THECAVUGROUP.com, the Cavu Group. I look forward to speaking with everyone soon. Thank you.
Thank you, Leslie.
BizDev Live, weekdays at 11 Eastern Time. BizDev Live, weekdays at 11 Eastern Time. BizD with C, brought to you by Cameron T. BizD with C, brought to you by Cameron T. This is business development, not even selling it. This is intelligent. If you watch it, I promise you benefit. Leadership and motivation, empathy and inspiration. Leadership and motivation, empathy and inspiration. BizDev Live, weekdays at 11 Eastern Time. BizDev Live, weekdays at 11 Eastern Time. BizD with C, brought to you by Cameron T. BizD with C.